Hey guys, Dimension Master Studios here. How y'all doing? Welcome to another video in my Weapons Explained series, the series where I take a look at various weapons from across the Ninjago franchise and take a look at their lore, powers and abilities, and other interesting facts about the weapons. And in today's video, I am going to be talking about the Aeroblades, the main weapons that we saw the ninja use during Season 5, Possession. So, let's get into this whole thing. So for starters, let's go over the history of the Aeroblades. And unlike the first two weapons that I've covered in this series, we actually don't know that much about the Aeroblades prior to the events of Season 5. We don't know who created the Aeroblades or why they were created. However, I feel like we can actually get a hint of this stuff based on what the Aeroblades are made out of. During the episode Sticks and Stones, Ronan says that when it comes to the Aeroblades, they were made out of deepstone, an aquatic material that was forged deep in the ocean. And when it comes to deepstone, it has the ability to effectively fight against ghosts. In fact, that is the main ability of the Aeroblades, their ability to defeat ghosts. So, given the fact that the Aeroblades have the ability to defeat ghosts, and they're made out of a material that can actually fight against ghosts, it seems like the main reason why the Aeroblades were made in the first place was specifically to fight against ghosts. Now, it's not entirely clear who created the Aeroblades and why they made the Aeroblades specifically to fight against ghosts, although given the fact that Ronan is the first character in the show who we see with Aeroblades, and given the fact that he has 5 Aeroblades by the time we first get a chance to properly see him in the show, with him giving 4 to the ninja and him using one during the events of Season 5, I feel like it's possible that when it comes to Ronan, he may have had something to do with the creation of the Aeroblades, although that's never actually been stated in the show, and that is purely headcanon on my part. Moving on, let's talk about the powers and the abilities of the Aeroblades, and I already went over this. When it comes to the Aeroblades, they have the ability to defeat ghosts, and that's it. That is the one and only power that the Aeroblades have. And we also know how the Aeroblades are able to do this. It is because of what the Aeroblades are made out of, deepstone, which remember is an aquatic material that was forged deep from the ocean. And it seems like when it comes to deepstone, it has the same effect on ghosts that water does, meaning that if ghosts end up coming into contact with deepstone, it will cause them to be defeated and they'll end up in the cursed realm again, as we saw during the events of Season 5. And I think it's pretty interesting that when it comes to deepstone, it's this solid object that has the ability to effectively fight against ghosts, which is the exact same thing that water is able to do. And again, this is something that I think is pretty interesting. Moving on, up next I want to talk about the design of the Aeroblades. When it comes to the Aeroblades, all of them share the exact same design, with each of them looking like gigantic shurikens. And this is something that I honestly really like. Given the fact that when it comes to ninja in pop culture, they often end up using shurikens a lot, I think it's honestly really cool that when it comes to Ninjago, we got a season where one of the main weapons that the ninja would end up using during a season was gigantic shurikens. That's something that I do like. However, that's not all, because there's something else that's interesting when it comes to the Aeroblades. And it's that whenever we see the ninja holding an Aeroblade, the color of the Aeroblade ends up corresponding with the ninja's elemental power. For Kai, his Aeroblade is red, for Jay, his Aeroblade is yellow, for Cole, his Aeroblade is orange, and for Zane, his Aeroblade is light blue. And that is a little detail that I do like, the color of the Aeroblades matching up with the ninja and their elemental powers. Moving on, another thing that I want to talk about are the characters who wield Aeroblades. Because over the events of the show, we actually see 8 characters wield Aeroblades at one point or another. However, 3 of those characters never actually wield Aeroblades at any point during the events of the show. For starters, when it comes to the characters who have wielded Aeroblades, like I said earlier, we have the original 4 ninja, with each of them wielding Aeroblades as their primary weapon during the events of Season 5. And the other character in the show who we see wield an Aeroblade is Ronan, We see him using an Aeroblade a few times during the events of Season 5, with an Aeroblade also acting as Ronin's primary weapon during Season 5, but we also see Ronin wielding an Aeroblade a few times during the events of Skybound. However, that's not all, because like I said, there's also a couple of characters who wielded Aeroblades, but we never saw this in the show. For starters, the first character that we have is Sensei Wu. When these sets were released for possession, we actually saw Sensei Wu using a golden Aeroblade in a few of the sets. However, Sensei Wu never actually wielded an Aeroblade at any point during the events of possession. Another character who we saw wield an Aeroblade, though, was Lloyd. However, we never actually saw Lloyd wield an Aeroblade in any of the sets. At least when it came to possession. I'm going to get back to that later on. When it came to Lloyd, instead, he actually wielded an Aeroblade in an online game that was available on LEGO's website around the time when Possession was out. Lloyd ended up wielding an Aeroblade during the game, and we saw that when it came to Lloyd, he used a green Aeroblade. And this also means that when it comes to the ninja, Nia is the only ninja who so far has never actually used an Aeroblade in any form of media when it comes to Ninjago, which I think is interesting, although at the same time I can understand why Nia doesn't wield an Aeroblade because she's already able to defeat ghosts on her own thanks to her water powers. However, going back to what I said earlier about the sets, we actually do see Lloyd wielding an Aeroblade in a set. However, it's a set that was released for Dragon's Rising. When it comes to Dragon's Rising, there were 3 gimmick sets that were released when it came to Dragon's Rising, one for Lloyd, one for Kai, and one for Nia. And when it comes to Lloyd, the weapon that he wields in that set is actually an Aeroblade. And I think this is pretty interesting, with us finally getting a chance to see Lloyd wielding an Aeroblade in set form. Again, I think that's honestly pretty cool. So finally, that leaves us with the big question: what exactly happened to the Aeroblades? Well, following the events of Season 5, the Aeroblades only ever made 2 other appearances in the show, and both of them happened during Skybound. We saw Ronin wielding the Aeroblades a couple times during the events of Skybound, and that was it. Those were the only times where we ever saw the Aeroblades appear in the show following the events of Season 5. Post-Season 6, the Aeroblades were never seen or referenced again at any point during the events of the show. Although, to be fair, I feel like this does make sense, given the fact that the main purpose of the Aeroblades was to fight against ghosts, and following the events of Season 5, the ninja never really had to fight against ghosts again. While, yes, Cole did fight against Yang and his students during the events of Day of the Departed, that was the only time after the events of Season 5 where the ninja ever really fought against ghosts again. Following Day of the Departed, we've never seen the ninja go up against a ghost at any other point during the events of the show. So once again, I feel like it makes sense why we haven't seen the Aeroblades appear in the show post-Season 6, because again, they really only had one purpose, and that was to fight against the ghosts, and we never really saw the ninja fighting against ghosts following the events of Season 5. And so that's pretty much all I got for you guys. Despite the Aeroblades only really playing a big role in Season 5, I honestly think that the Aeroblades are some pretty cool weapons when it comes to Ninjago. Like I said, I like the idea of them being these gigantic shurikens, and at the same time, I do think their ability to destroy ghosts is an interesting idea when it comes to Ninjago. Although, when it comes to the idea of the Aeroblades reappearing, I highly doubt that's ever going to happen, given the fact that we haven't seen the Aeroblades seen or referenced at any point in the show following the events of Season 6. Again, I highly doubt we're ever going to see them appear again during the events of the show, but hey, we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. And so that's pretty much all I got for you guys. So tell me down below what do you guys think? Tell me, what do you guys think about the Aeroblades, and was there anything that I left out when it came to the Aeroblades? Also, tell me down below what weapon you guys want to see me cover next. Again, tell me down below, and I hope you guys enjoy. Later, guys. This is Dimension Master Studios, signing off.